Untamed.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Platform.
iOS, it's only sport. That's the name of the podcast. That's the name of our show every afternoon. Martin, Devlin, Lachlan War on the Platform. Talking today, the All Blacks named to play the Box on the weekend. The Tall Blacks are kicking off their World Championship campaign only against the United States this coming Saturday. Ranfurly Shield Rugby and the Aussies Eddie Jones, Steve Hansen. A Wallaby perspective provided by Greg Martin. But as always, we start the program tablets in hand. I say, gather my flock. It is time for a sermon. The All Blacks have been selected. Let's go to the mountaintop.
We live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots.
I'm liking this All Black side selected by Coach Foster to face the Box Saturday morning. Injuries aside, this is the strongest possible lineup that he could choose. And he had to. Because for most of the players, it's the first game that they have played since July 29th. That is a calendar month ago. Next game after South Africa, as well, you know, is France opening match of the Rugby World Cup. So if our top boys didn't get a run this weekend, it would have been 6 weeks between test matches. So, of course, the match is meaningful, as is every test versus the Springboks, but also in terms of adequate combative preparation for the World Cup, it is essential. Again, to win the tournament, we have to play 3 must-win test matches in 15 days from the 15th to the 29th of October. The only way any team is going to complete that very daunting task is if their players are battle-hardened and match-fit. Past World Cup defeats have doesn't happen by resting and rotating players. It doesn't happen by doing great beat tests and ticking the biometric box or whatever KPI indicators that the sports scientist clipboard insists upon. Players need to play. They got to be ready to play. So the All Black side to face the Springboks at Twickenham was always going to be, except for those with injuries, the strongest possible side that we could select. This is a real test in every way that you want to regard it. It's not about winning the Qatar Airways Cup or whatever we're playing for. It's making sure we are ready, able, at the level required, we are battle-hardened, and we are match-fit.
Devlin.
What do you want? We want information. Information. You won't get it.
The Platform.
All right, to kick things off, Martin, the biggest sporting event this weekend, I think, for New Zealand sports fans, fair to say, is the All Blacks Springboks test. That's on Saturday morning at 6:30 a.m. Bit of a strange time to have an All Blacks game on a Saturday morning.
First ever, bro.
Is the...
First ever, I think. I'm just trying to think of a World Cup maybe that would have been, but I can't even think of one.
No.
That weird World Cup in 1999 had some games on it. Actually, there was. No, it might have been 07. It might have been the 07 quarterfinal.
That was on a Sunday. Because it was the same day as Bathurst that year. I remember it really well.
Okay.
It was definitely a Sunday.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Right, this is the All Blacks 23 for that match. Pretty much a full-strength side. Ethan de Groot, Dane Coles, Tyrell Lomax, Sam Whitelock, Scott Barrett, Luke Jacobson at blindside. Really happy to see that. A big fan of Luke Jacobson. Sam Kane, the captain, Ari Savia, Aaron Smith, Richie Mwanga, Mark Talea, Geordie Barrett, Rico Ioane, Will Jordan, Bowden Barrett. That is the 15. The bench has a 6-2 split with 6 forwards and only 2 backs. No first 5 cover on the bench, but of course Bowden Barrett will provide that should it be needed. 2 locks, Josh Law to provide to come off the bench, and we've got a full front row there as well. England rugby number 8, Billy Vunipola will miss the opening game of the Rugby World Cup against Argentina after he was handed a 3-match suspension for a red card against Ireland at the weekend. It's not a 3-match suspension. Now, I got mixed up with this yesterday. Owen Farrell's is 4 weeks, but he'll miss 3 matches. Mm-hmm. Billy Vunipola's, I think, is the same, where it's 3 weeks, but he's missing 2 matches because they've only got 1 more warm-up, which is, I think, against Japan this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. Or I need to double check.
No, was it Fiji or they play Fiji?
Oh, no, I think it is Fiji, because Fiji are definitely playing at Twickenham this weekend. I know that. So it could be that.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Yep. So I believe it's only 2 matches he'll miss, not 3, so there's often a little bit of confusion around that. All right, NBC last night, Wellington defended the Ranfurly Shield 7-0 win over Tasman. Very low scoring, but they did just enough to win. Wellington's next Ranfurly Shield defence will come against countries Monaco on September 2nd next week. Later this weekend on Sunday they play Canterbury on the road. Spain's Jenny Hermoso has called for an exemplary measure, for exemplary
You're
measures.
getting tongue-tied, which is quite appropriate, I suppose. But
Exemplary measures to be taken against Spanish Football Federation President Luis Rubiales after his unsolicited kiss on her lips after the team's victory in the Women's World Cup
do you
final.
know what it means, exemplary measures?
No.
Okay, dictionary definition, just in case people didn't know, it serves as a warning. That's okay. That's what she's saying. Because I mean, the actual phrase, I'm looking for exemplary measures. You go, well, what the hell does that mean? Is that a punishment or something? Yes, it is. It serves as a warning.
Yeah, slap in the hand. Telling on.
That's it.
The FIFA World Cup may be over. It certainly was a bit of a party here in New Zealand. Definitely a party across the ditch, but it could come back. According to FIFA head of women's football Sarai Berriman, who has backed the prospect of another edition being held in New Zealand and Australia. I'm assuming that is the Women's World Cup, not the men's.
Well, they don't have a host for the next tournament. Did you know that? Oh, they put it out to the market. FIFA, yeah.
Could be us. The trainer of Kiwi boxer Miyamoto, Isaac Peach, that's his name, that's her trainer, Isaac Peach. He's demanding the axing of referee Ignatius Missilidis from her first world boxing title defence, which is this weekend. Motu captured the vacant IBO Super Bantam crown with a unanimous decision victory over Canadian Tanya Walters back in April, and will put that belt on the line against Alan Simwaka of Malawi on Saturday. But Peach isn't happy with the presence of Missiladius on the card after his judging performance in Sydney, where he scored the right at complete odds with his fellow referees in a recent bout. Heartbreak for Kiwi javelin thrower Tori Peters last night. She missed out on a spot in the final of her event at the World Athletics Championships by a single spot and just 7 centimetres short. Bit of a shame that was. And for the time being, Martin, that is what is making news.
Devlin.
Unbelievable! Incredible!
The platform.
Most independent and trustworthy journalistic voice in New Zealand sport, I believe, is Jamie Wall, who joins us out of London. Jamie, thanks again, brother. Any surprises for you?
Not really, no. The only real surprise is the makeup of the bench, where Foster's gone for 6 forwards and 2 backs, which we haven't really seen from the All Blacks, I don't think, ever, really. And ever since they've started having 8-man benches. So we asked him about that today. He said it was just a way of rotating his squad and getting the most out of what they've got. He's a little bit concerned about the locking situation. Obviously, Retallick's still out injured, and so they're making the most of Josh Lord, who's not in the World Cup squad, but he's been brought over as cover, so he's been put on the bench there. It was kind of interesting, though, because they had a bit of a choice there at 6 with Shannon Frizzell being out. They've named Luke Jacobson there, which is a good call, and it makes complete sense, but was a little bit of thought that he might have gone with Scott Barrett there at 6 and perhaps bumped Tupou Vai up into a starting spot, which then would have ended up with a 5-3 split on the bench. But we've got basically the team that everyone had presumed. We've got the starting 15 anyway. Just the only real surprise, from me is that David Havili's not getting a run on that bench. I would have thought they would have wanted to give him some game time, but other than that, it was pretty easy to tell what this team was going to be.
Roygaard on the bench named, so he's the second choice halfback now. Can we assume that?
I feel like we're probably going to need a few more games to really safely assume that. Again, I asked Foster about that today. It was more of like a game time thing for Cam Roygaard. Being a reserve halfback in the All Blacks, you don't get a hell of a lot of minutes. Roygaard, I think, only played the one test and came off the bench in that. So, I think that position is still a little bit up in the air. Given Roygaard's great form in Super Rugby, I would have thought he would have got a bit more time in a test match environment by now. So perhaps that's the only position that they're really kind of just ironing out, which really, though, considering how much Aaron Smith is going to be playing in these World Cup matches, is not that big a deal really when it comes down to it.
As far as the left wing spot goes, Mark Talia has now overtaken Caleb Clark. Can we assume that?
Yeah, I think we could have assumed that a while ago as well. Caleb has played really well in his last appearance for the All Blacks in Melbourne. I thought he came off the bench, did a really good job there, scored a good try, and showed that he's not just an out-and-out winger. But at the same time, I think it's just more of a case of Talia is just too good to ignore. And Jordan on the other wing, I mean, you've got the two most in-form wingers in the country at the moment who are scoring the most tries. So I think that, despite all of the questions around Clark's involvement in the team, it's probably just a safe bet that those guys are in it anyway.
As far as Leonard Brown on the bench, I'm really confused about this guy's role. I mean, as an impact player, he's not going to come on and do anything that creates impact. He just seems to me to be a fill-in plug, and I just kind of wonder why that selection, why they wouldn't have actually tried something different.
Yeah, well, I feel like there's enough cover in the starting backline to be able to deal with any potential injuries or whatever that's going to happen, and that Leonard Brown's more there to just sort of be there as a more straight substitution in the midfield, perhaps. That's the way I'm reading it anyway, because you can move all those guys around. Obviously, you've got Jordan, who can play fullback as well, Bowden, who can play 10, and Geordie Barrett, who can pretty much play anywhere in that back line. So I'm reading that more as Leonard Brown's going to come off the bench for perhaps Rieko Ioane and just take some carries off him, because, again, they've got a big campaign coming up. So that's how I read that selection. But again, I would have thought they would have gone with David Havili, but obviously not.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. The Minister of Common Sense needs to step in and talk about the All Blacks.
We need to talk.
And your selection thoughts.
We need to talk.
6-2 split, you happy with that? What's it really telling us? I don't think it tells us anything other than it's for this particular match.
Yeah, because Josh Lord won't be at the World Cup unless there's a drastic revelation with injuries, or he has to come in for Brody. I don't know. I don't think that'll happen. So, I don't really read much into it.
Lord goes home after this.
Yeah.
I think August the 28th, people, is the cut-off date. So if you want to replace a player, then you have to replace them before August the 28th. Otherwise, it gets injured. You've got to wait a week after that. All right. In terms of... the hooker. So Dane Cole starts this. He is not the number one hooker. On the bench is Samasoni. I believe Cody Taylor is just simply being rested. I don't know why that is, but I suspect Cody Taylor will be starting as the number one, number two when it comes to the match against France. We agree with that?
Yep, agreed. Okay, absolutely.
All right. Everyone else we're going through. De Groot and Lomax are our two starting props. That seems rock solid. Sam Whitelock and Barrett will lock the scrum unless Retallick comes back from injury earlier. And we don't expect him back until maybe the Italian test.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's agree on that. Loose forwards then. Jacobson, Kane, Ardie. We talked about this yesterday, and I think we both agreed that the easiest thing for Ian Foster and the selectors to do is just to simply replace one player rather than jig the whole loose forward track. Is that why you think Dalton starts on the bench and Luke Jacobson comes? Is Jacobson a natural 6 or is he a bit?
Well, he plays everywhere. I think he's an 8. That's what he plays more. He's less of a hard-hitting grunter than, say, your what's his name, Shannon Frizzell's and whatnot, or Scott Barrett, who would typically play there. But it made sense because he's played more blindside than Dalton, as simple as that. Dalton has played 7 and a little bit of 8, whereas Luke Jacobson has played all 3 positions, namely 8. But that made sense. You said it yesterday. You can't change more than one position if you can help it.
No, that's right. Would you be happier, though, if Semipeni Fino was playing?
Yes,
same.
I would.
Same.
I still don't get it.
Yeah, that's the rock under my beach towel in terms of the All Black squad in the World Cup. I would feel so much better if it was him, a specialist. Reed, what's that? A specialist, number 6. In terms of the midfield, Geordie and Rieko. We've got another couple of people. Lester Whaonganuku and also David Havili. Anton Leonard-Brown is the pet rabbit. I just don't get what the fuss is about this guy. I really don't. Look, he played pretty well when he came on against Australia in Dunedin, but he did what you'd expect of anyone wearing a black jersey coming off the bench in the midfield for the All Blacks. He can't beat a guy with pace. He doesn't have that. He's not big enough to absolutely barge through you.
No.
Is he that good as a backline organiser, tackler, distributor that he beats those two?
I've never rated him as a defender.
It's perplexing to me.
Yeah.
Absolutely perplexing. And I just don't know why you wouldn't give Havili a game, because when does he get a game? He's not going to play against France in the opener.
Yeah,
He's football, isn't he? He's just there to basically.
Well, the one I would have had Leicester on the bench because for me,
he's a game breaker.
He's a game breaker. I think he can actually play that centre position better than Rico because I mean, if Rico's done well, but Leicester for me is a better attacking player. Rico is not known for his defence and he's not terrible, but he's not a great defender. And I don't know a huge amount about Leicester's defence, but I don't think he's terrible from what I've seen. And he's, as you said, he's a game breaker. He breaks the line.
5050 people, explain to us. I don't get what it is about Anton Lienert-Brown. I just don't. Give me a game where he has stood out in an All Black jersey and been somebody that you go, wow, that guy. Give me a game where he, I tell you, against Australia at Eden Park, Caleb Clark played bloody well and he played really well. This was 2 or 3 years ago before
2020.
Okay, since that particular time, tell me a game, ladies and gentlemen, where
he's always injured.
Well, that's right.
That's the thing.
You know, give me a game where Anton Lienert-Brown has been this guy that is so essential to the All Blacks backline.
Next!
Roy Gard, off the bench at 9. What does this tell you? Does it mean that Finlay Christie is definitely our number 3, number 9?
No. I think it's the opposite. I think it's more just giving Roy Gard some game time and seeing how he plays against tough opposition. Because I think if we had a World Cup final, right, we had a quarterfinal right now, Christie's probably our halfback off the bench purely on experience by comparison to Roy Gard. But I think it's a bit like the same with Dane Coles, and Jacobson as well to a degree. Jacobson's there out of necessity, but I think there's a few guys that Foster and the coaches want to get more of a look at.
Philasande Sixaba is a presenter, commentator, contributor for SuperSport out of South Africa. A Bok perspective on this pre-World Cup warm-up at Twickenham on Saturday morning. Your lineup for this match, the Springbok lineup, is very, very strong. So obviously, clearly, the team has taken this match more than seriously. It's more than just a warm-up.
Yeah, more than just a warm-up. I don't think that any Springbok versus All Blacks test match has ever been a warm-up test match or a friendly test match. It's always serious business, and I think it's the last sort of chance for Jacques Nienaber and the Springbok coaches to really get everybody on board and try and get as many minutes out of some of the key players that are in that starting lineup. So it's a great opportunity for so many of those players to make a real big claim for that starting position for that opening game against Scotland. So I think it's a great opportunity for the players, especially against the All Blacks, to test themselves ahead of that opening match.
I'm going to go through one or two players here because you've lost some to injury. A centre, a lock, your first 500, Pollard, obviously, of course. You're welcome back, Khaleesi. We'll get onto that in a second. But Mani Libbok is the pivot with the number 10 jersey. Tell us about this man.
Well, he's an exciting kind of fly-off. You know, he brings something very much different to a Handré Pollard. He's a very much ball-in-hand kind of first five. I think a lot of things that the South African public sort of moan about is his inconsistency from the kicking tee. And I think that's something that he'll improve on as he gets more minutes in Test match rugby. I think he's about 8 Test matches in now, and he's really just stood up in terms of his attacking play. He's got a really good defensive play as well. So for me, he's one of those guys where you look at him from a point that he gets the Springboks going, particularly when they have a strong pack like they have against New Zealand this coming Friday. So you can expect a lot of some fast play coast to coast from a guy like Mani Libbok, and he's got a really good thinking brain inside him. You know, he knows when to attack, he knows when to kick and vary his play. So very much an exciting prospect.
Philasande Sixaba is with us, presenter, commentator, analyst for SuperSport South Africa, and we'll be doing that all through the World Cup. This is the platform. All right, your captain, Siya Kolisi, comes back, and I heard Lachlan talking to you about this before we started the interview. It's just what a remarkable recovery story this is. He looks as though he has never been away.
It's actually a miracle, you know, because an ACL injury, it's a year out of rugby, and he's recovered in 4 months. It's an actual it's a big blessing to have a guy like Siya Kolisi back from injury. He contributes so much, not only from a leadership point of view, but a lot of what South Africa want to play goes through a guy like Siya Kolisi. If you look at, the attacking rucks that he secures and makes sure that there's clean ball for the other forwards to carry from, clean ball for the backs to try and attack from. A lot of that work comes through Siya Kolisi, and we saw it against Wales at the Principality Stadium this past weekend, and his effectiveness in just 40 minutes that he played at the Principality. So it's a huge boost for South Africa to have a guy like Siya Kolisi back, not only from a leadership point of view, but the game plan that South Africa want to play goes through a guy like Siya Kolisi, and making sure that he gives the platform that the Mani Lebox can use, the Ebenezabets can get front football and really try and run on hard and bring about that physicality. So a lot of the dirty work, the donkey work that he does goes very much unseen, but it's a huge part of South Africa's game plan, and to have him back is fantastic for the Springboks.
A couple of quick questions before we let you go. We always thank you so much for your time. Look, just looking down your team sheet, and you've got players playing obviously in England, you've got players playing in France, you've got players playing in Japan. Is there any worry about the standard of rugby that any of these guys are playing? I mean, it's a question that we wrestle with here in New Zealand all the time about letting our players go and play overseas and still selecting them. It doesn't seem to be an issue with you guys. How do you know that if a guy, for example, like Malcolm Marx, who's playing in Japan, or Peter Steph Dutoy playing in Japan, the standard of that rugby is not test match rugby. So how confident can you be of those guys being up to speed?
It's difficult. I think it's a difficult question to try and answer because of the different standards that different competitions have. Top 14 players will probably go through a lot more physical load than your Japanese league players. So it's kind of difficult to try and replicate test match level standards in those kind of leagues. But I know the Springboks keep tabs on all those players. It's a huge pool of players that play outside of South Africa. So Felix Jones's role was crucial in terms of getting in touch with those guys that play their football outside of South Africa. So it's difficult, but I think South Africa have tried and to put measures in place to make sure that those guys have the required loads to slot back into test match rugby without too much difficulty. It's always going to be a question that pops up because of the level of physicality and the standard that those leagues have. But I think South Africa have managed it pretty well.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full.
The Tight Five.
5 separate sporting topics, roughly a minute. Thereabouts on each, and when the bell goes, so do we on to the next topic. FIBA World Champs. We've got the USA, we've got Jordan, we've got Greece. Why did the Yanks take their best players, Lachlan? Usain is insane. I want to go through a piece of sporting history today that happened in 2004 at the Athens Olympics, which I was there in person to witness. It's all about Usain Bolt, how he ran then and how he ran 4 years later in Beijing. The Shield Challenge last night. What does the empty stadium tell you, as I've just espoused in that big waffly sermon? Jenny Hermoso is calling for exemplary measures to be taken against the Spanish Football Federation President Luis Rubiales for the pash on the lips. And also, obviously included in this, is Coach Filder and the breaststroke. The All Blacks lineup, well, we've been discussing that all day. You happy with that? And mandarins with too tighter skins. Yeah, Lachlan wants to have a good bitch about this as well. Let's kick it with the FIBA World Champs because Brendon Pongia is going to join us in just a couple of minutes. I'm going to ask him all about Stephen Adams too and that knee. Remember we talked about this last week and spoke to a guy from Memphis about it, a play-by-play caller for Bally Sport. He then got back to us and said that the Grizzlies got in touch with him and said, don't talk to them ever again, and he won't be talking to us ever again about it. All we were doing was simply asking a question, what the hell went on with that knee, and was it misdiagnosed? And that happens sometimes. Doctors do get it wrong like everyone else. Anyway, the best players in the US never used to play the Olympics. And then what happened in 1972 is Russia beat the United States in that very infamous match where the United States team still haven't collected their silver medals. That was when the clock was reset. It was reset. And that was one of the very first times we've ever seen a game decided in the very last couple of seconds where the guy threw end to end down the court. And then after that, they said, hang on a second, this is embarrassing. That was the first time the United States has ever lost an Olympic basketball game. We're going to get our best players back. And then we started getting what's called the Dream Team. And I've been there at a couple of Olympics, and I'll tell you a little story. In 2004, in terms of the media centre and that, the security was just overwhelming. You know, you had to go through 2 or 3 body scanners. I'm not joking. It could take you an hour and a half to get into the building. And however, when the United States basketball team arrived, Lachlan, they didn't arrive in any kind of official car. They arrived in their big black SUVs like Donald Trump or the US president, and they would just whip through side door. They had their... These guys are treated completely differently. They turn up to the Olympics because there's a gold medal attached. Well, what's the difference between the Olympics and the World Championships? I know they consider the NBA to be the World Championships, but this is the International Basketball World Championships. Why don't they play their best players?
I really don't know. I don't know if it's down to the players not wanting to play or it's... I mean, it's kind of happened a little bit with the Olympics. Because I think the last Olympics, it wasn't, or might have been the Olympics before that, it wasn't every single one of the best US players from the NBA. It was a couple of good ones. I remember Kevin Durant was at the 2016 one. I can't remember if he was at 2021. But I don't know. I think it's more down to the players. I think a lot of them just view the NBA as the pinnacle of their job.
It is. No question.
And so a lot of them just
none of these international teams would beat the Denver Nuggets.
Oh, no.
No. In actual fact... If you looked at, there are some crap NBA teams. I was just going to say, if you looked at all, there are some crap NBA teams. Well, there's about 24 of them, and some of them are absolute rubbish, aren't they? So
it's 30.
30. The top, I'd say 15 to 20 teams would probably beat most international teams in the world.
I think it would be 25.
25?
Yeah. Because the best players in the world go and play in the NBA.
It's the off-season. I get that, okay? However, some of these guys are playing. And, I mean, you know, Anthony Edwards is a star. No question about that.
He's on a team that's not exactly in the championship bubble. I think that's another thing as well. I think if you get all the main contending teams and the best players on those teams, those guys aren't at the FIBA World Cup.
Yeah. Well, ask Ty Lue about this. I'm name-dropping. Of course I'm name-dropping. My God, we got this guy. He's going to be on the program tomorrow, Tyronn Lue, that guy. The guy who coached the Cavs 2015-16 history-making NBA championship run. He'll be on your platform tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Usain is insane. That in a second. The Shield Challenge last night. Did you watch it?
I saw the highlights. I was out of course not.
That would have been a very small highlights package because there was only 7 points scored.
It was 12 minutes.
Yeah.
It was 12 minutes of highlights. And I didn't see the score, so I watched the highlights fresh. It was 12 minutes of nothing.
Yeah, it wasn't the greatest game. Okay.
No.
But look, it was more about the importance of the occasion, and I understand that, and I get that, and I get why people were looking at it going, my God, what a terrible game of sport. 7-0, you know, isn't enough to attract anyone really to actually take time out to say, I'm going to watch 12 minutes of highlights even.
I hope there's no one out there though saying that, oh, this is the reason the NPC sucks. It's like, no. A lot of games this year have been great.
They have been.
But like all sports, there's great games and there's bad games.
What is it then? We've had a text come in. Martin, you get a bigger crowd at Speedway than an NPC game now. You would. You know, if those, the powers that be, seriously, aren't absolutely crapping themselves about this, and I suspect, you know, a lot of them will probably be looking for an avenue out of New Zealand rugby in the next year or two, and, you know, seek another cushy job, an administrative post, sporting somewhere else, overseas or whatever. But those that run the game, I mean, your obligation is to do more. You know, in the kaupapa of NZR, it is to foster and develop the game. How can you sit there, stare down the barrel of us when you've had a record loss of $40-something million? You've spent $100 million more than you spent last year. You've pumped $20 million into the women's game. That's never coming back. But okay, I get the fact that you want to develop and foster women's rugby, and I get that bit. But you're spending money hand over fist, and yet the game is dying in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
There are no crowds, and this has happened for over a decade. It has been a long, slow death. And yet, where is the marketing plan? Where's the business plan? Where's the enthusiasm at all around? There's no launch for the NPC.
No. It is as if they focus solely on Super Rugby and up, and everything else they're leaving to rot.
Do you honestly believe that NZR Plus is the answer?
No. Well,
People, I've looked at this and it looks bloody great. The production values are slick. The programs they've got on it are fantastic. But these are $1 million programs that you're paying somebody to make. This is Netflix quality stuff.
Look,
as soon as you start charging people for it and say, to watch the All Blacks, you're going to have to pay on NZR Plus. No one's going to jump, mate.
Well, no.
It's like Spark Sport. No one will jump.
If they did that in New Zealand, there's three things in New Zealand that at least, okay, if you talk about the broadcast side of it, that would entice people to switch platforms. It's the All Blacks, it is the Premier League, and the NRL. They're the three that I think would be the ones. If NZR Plus or New Zealand Rugby using NZR Plus said, no, the All Blacks are going to be broadcast on our own platform, that's it, and Sky Sport don't have anything to do with the All Blacks anymore, then people would sign up to it. The numbers of viewers in New Zealand would plummet massively because you'd find people using VPNs to get overseas broadcasts of it where they can get other stuff with it. But look, the thing is, they have totally disregarded NPC and lower. The provincial unions and the clubs and the real grassroots level have been totally... You go and talk to those people involved with those unions across the country, how much communication, how much support, how much work they do with NZR, how much they actually seem to care and invest in that side of the game. They'll tell you very little. We're fending for ourselves. I'm pretty damn sure that's the case. I've got a good friend who's a board member at Whanganui Rugby. Whanganui Rugby, excuse me. And this is kind of the gist of what's going on. Now, what they totally don't understand, for some reason, is that before you get to Super Rugby, you've got to play somewhere else. It's not just high school.
You don't come out of Super Rugby development squad. There's got to be, that's like, you go from first 15 into Super Rugby? No, you don't.
For guys like Rico Ioane, that was the case.
1 in a million does,
and at
right?
the same time, I think many smart rugby brains would sit there and say that you've been a little underwhelmed to an extent with Rico Ioane based on the incredible start to his rugby career he had. That's at least my opinion. So they have totally disregarded that side of it. And when you do that, it's like cutting out the roots of a vegetable. Well, it's going to rot and die, isn't it?
That's exactly what's happening,
You need to keep the
But it's got to be solved by sending 20 of them, including all the board members, over to France for 6 weeks. Lavish and lavish, don't you? All right. You're happy with the All Blacks lineup? We discussed that to play the box. Dalton Papali'i is the one. So Luke Jacobson plays 6. What does it say to you about what the role of Dalton Papali'i is? Is he essentially now just going to be a bench player unless someone gets injured?
Well, no, it's not. I don't think it's that complicated. I think it's simply that Luke Jacobson has played more 6 than Dalton Papali'i. That is why he's starting ahead of him. The All Blacks have shown far more faith in Dalton over the last couple of years and this year as their main backup loose forward. But I think, and we've heard this a lot from Murray Mexted, which is kind of nice to see, because one thing I hate about rugby, at least with the backline and the loose forwards, the last couple of years, there's a real fluidity with it. I think when people think you play... Dade Savi was playing blindside flank at the last World Cup. He's now playing number 8, but his best position is probably 7, so it's really strange. But what they're looking at is going, we've got a 7 who's playing really well, we want to keep him there. We've got an 8 who's playing really well, we want to keep him there. We've got a guy who can play 6 and has played there at Super Rugby level, let's put him in there. Sure, there may be this other guy who we may play a little bit more off the bench in Dalton Papali'i, but we've got a guy in Luke Jacobson who has played more 6. Full stop, let's just put him in.
Oh, all right.
I think it's as simple as that.
I still wish that Semi-Penny was there, mate. I don't understand why you would have played him in Dunedin if you're not going to take him to the World Cup. What the hell is the point of that? I just don't get it. And also, I thought he was overseas with Jack Lord as part of...
Josh Lord,
sorry, as part of the training squad to play against...
But again, he won't be at the World Cup. Now, there's actually... I wonder if there's a bit more to this. There's a good chance that Josh Lord could be brought in at the World Cup. Maybe Brodie's injury is a bit more serious than we realised. That's why I think Josh Lord is coming off the bench.
What's going to happen as far as the Spanish Football Federation president goes? Does he resign? I think he should resign after his actions at the open mouth pash kiss. And Jenny Hermoso has turned in for. She's asked for exemplary measures. So what she's saying is that this can't happen again.
Yeah, I don't know if he was ramming his tongue down there. If you look at the footage, it's just a hard peck, to be fair. It lasts a while, but I don't know. I don't know what will happen. I think he will, but at the same time, is it something Oh no, that sounds real. Sounds
Well,
very
no. What the question you're
Stone
about
Age
to
of me,
ask
but
is,
is
no,
it
is it so
is it so serious that he needs to be sacked?
Sacked. I personally don't think the Spanish Federation will sack him because of the fact that they are victorious and everything else. But I think that there will be some kind of reprimand. He'll be told,
He'll be told.
the behaviour's out of order.
He'll have to make more of a public apology in front of the camera.
That was it. I dare say that'll. I mean, it's completely out of order, completely inappropriate. We all know that. Usain Bolt, ladies and gentlemen, great piece of history here. In 2004. On this very day in Athens, he was running the 200-metre heat. So I was there watching this. He ran 21.05 in the heat. Missed out on the second lot of heats for the 200 metres, right? Usain Bolt. 4 years later, he ran 19.3 in Beijing and won the gold. Yeah. That's 17 and a half metres, 1.75 seconds better in a 200. 17 and a half metres. Visualise this. We put this out on our Instagram, Martin Devlin Sport, and we'll show you the physical distance between his race in 2004 and his race in 2008. 17 and a half metres ahead of himself, slowing down at the finish and looking at the screen. Could have been 18 or 19 metres. He could have gone pretty much 19 flat if he'd really gone for it. That's an incredible training regime over 4 years locked into achieve that.
Well, you think he's a drug cheat.
I don't think anything. I just think it's absolutely... He's an amazing human being.
You think he's a
who
drug cheat.
overachieved with just a training regime that I wish that I could actually... I knew what it was because I think every other athlete in the world would actually follow it if that was the case. No, I'm not accusing him of anything.
Well,
I'm just saying it's an incredible...
You're not saying it, but you are saying
nothing.
it.
All I'm saying it's an amazing statistic when you look at it, isn't it?
To be fair, when you look at the guys that he did the relays with in 08, 12 and 16...
Well, they all took drugs, mate. Okay,
they've all been done for drugs.
That's not him.
Well,
it's not him.
I know what you're saying.
I'm not saying nothing,
I know what
mate.
you're saying.
I'm just putting it out there for people. You make your own judgment on it. The Tall Blacks up against it. The best in the world. That's the United States' first match of the FIBA Basketball World Championships kicking off Saturday. We also play Jordan. We play Greece. Brendon Pongia was part of the team that knocked out Australia to go to the 2002 champs. He was there, didn't spend a lot of time on court, of course, was in the stands, but leading the haka, a big-time basketball man. He joins us to run an expert eye over. Looking forward to this kicking off Sunday morning. It's the wee small hours, but it's us against the USA in basketball. Doesn't happen that often. How many times have we played them?
I think the last time we played, I played against them in a pre-game, but it wasn't at the World Champs. But I think in competition, it might have been at the Olympics. It might have been Athens, I think, that we played them. So you're not that often, right? But a different team, a young team, a team that's, I think, beatable. Whether or not we have the horses to do that, I don't know. You know, the truth will be in the pudding. I mean, they had a reasonable build-up, but the Americans are young. But as you know, Marty, the NBA game and the international game are two different games, right, in terms of from a defensive perspective, right? There's a lot more openness within when you drive into the hole, so there's not big 7-foot centres sitting in the middle like it is in international basketball, so it makes it a little bit difficult. But in saying that, they're young, they're youthful, and hey, it'll be a tough game. But all games at World Champs are tough.
If we had to pick one of these three, Greece, Jordan or the United States, to win one of them, what's more likely?
Jordan. I think Jordan is. We've faced Jordan a number of times over the last couple of years, just in qualifyings, through the Asia-Pacific qualifyings. We've beaten them. I think that's the match you need to target. But in saying that, you know, on any given day, I mean, Greece are going to be tough though, right? Although Greece are without Giannis is not playing, but they've got so many great players that are playing internationally, you know, in the NBA. The Greek competition's pretty tough. So if out of any of them, I think it's that middle game against Jordan.
Why do the United States select a team without all of their superstars? Anthony Edwards would be the name that most people would know. Brandon Ingram, obviously, I mean, he's an all-star, but I mean, the rest of them are, you know, they're great NBA players, but they're not their real Champions League level guys.
Yeah, I don't know whether the top players, well, right now the top players really sort of see that as a focus for the World Champs, which is quite interesting because I think back to 2002 when the Tall Blacks came, you know, fourth at the World Champs. They took a pretty ordinary team there and they they ended up not even, I think they started 6th or 7th. And then after that, they started putting decent teams together. I don't know, injuries, people were trying to focus on where their money's going to be coming from in the future. So, resting their bodies. It's probably what's the same what's happened with the Tall Blacks, with the Webster boys. I think their bodies, playing back-to-back-to-back seasons, that's kind of thinking about longevity. So I think that may be a telling factor of why, some of these players don't want to, they don't see it as a big thing, World Championships. I think Olympics is more something that people want to aspire to be part of and to win a gold medal.
Stephen Adams, you spent some time with him recently. How's his knee coming along?
Yeah, good question. I got to sort of talk to him about what actually happened, and really interesting around the medical staff there. You got someone in the medical staff there that's paid a reasonable amount of money, supposed to look after, players that they've invested in for the future. He got a knee injury, and apparently they didn't identify it, and he went away to get a second opinion, and they basically said that, you're lucky that it was literally hanging, literally hanging in terms of not, it being completely wasted and taken out. So he's back doing his rehab, but I find it interesting, that you pay your medical staff such big money to look after players, but yet they can't, identify something so simple, and it takes for him to go and get a second opinion somewhere else to realise that it's actually a lot worse than what they thought. So I think his rehab's going well. He still hasn't really, when I spoke to him, he was saying that he's still going through that. He hasn't got into game situations yet, but it's feeling okay. But I guess the true test is when you get into a game situation, right, to see how it goes in that session.
Brendon Pongia is with us, a former Tall Black, former national champion, of course, and seen all over basketball. So he got it seen too by Memphis, I presume or assume, and then obviously thought afterwards, no, there is something wrong with this, and so he just independently went off to see somebody else and said, hey, can you have a look at it?
Very much so, and so they identified that it was a lot worse than what was picked up by the Memphis organisation, which is, I think, is quite bad if you ask me, because if you look at them not having him in that final series last year, he was a key component to that team, and they looked lost in the playoffs, which probably was a benefit, right, really, for him, I think, and the value that he adds to a team, that they couldn't really move forward through the playoffs. And the thing is with Stephen, what I love about Stephen, he's a workman, he's a workhorse, right? He does the little things, he screens well, but he's smart. He's a smart big man. He's not the big man, the new big man that's coming through that can stretch and shoot the three-pointers. I know he can do that, but he sort of sticks to his knitting and he makes everyone else around him better.
Greg Martin, Triple M breakfast host out of Brisbane. They do a men's show. They talk about men's stuff. It rates its absolute off. Former Wallaby fullback joins us every Thursday. There is opposition to erecting a statue of Sam Kerr alongside Wally Lewis outside Suncorp, mate. What is wrong with you people?
Well, it's not me, mate, because I came out roaring on Monday when I heard about this. We came fourth.
Yeah.
So we had a discus thrower at the World Athletics Championships, came fourth in the discus. I was calling, and he's from Brisbane, I was calling for him to have a statue.
Should do.
Anyone who now loses stuff gets a statue. That's simple as that. I think it'll disappear, mate. Friggin' statues.
Right.
Actually, just talking the World Athletics Championships, you see what's just happened overnight? Gold for Australia in the pole vault. So all those little 12-year-old girls that have been running around with soccer balls in the last couple of weeks, they're all now just going to grab mum's broom and jump over things, I believe. Is that how sport works? Yes.
Well, okay, I go back to the 2000 Olympics where Tatiana, not the most familiar Australian name, but I do remember that she...
Do you remember her?
I remember her. Well, who didn't remember her? She pole vaulted for Australia at that time and won a medal, but I mean, and it didn't really, not a lot of take up on the sport then. So yeah, we'll park that one. A couple more things, mate. The Spanish are in a little bit of trouble. Well, that is the president of the association tongue diving one of the players, and then the coach doing a bit of a breast grope. You've seen this?
Yeah, well, why else would you want to become president if you can't grope some of your athletes? What's the use of being president? It's not just about cutting ribbons.
That's it.
It's sometimes about getting the grope.
Well, is it the Spanish way, or is it just a couple of grubby old guys?
I think you and I know it's grubby old guys,
Yeah.
but I'd like to think that the Spanish do this. Like, I'm always walking down the road and Spanish blokes grabbing my arm. Doesn't that happen to you all the time? And you just shake your head and go, oh, you Spanish, you're so funny. European.
Yeah, it's a cultural thing, isn't it, eh? They have a siesta during the day.
What a perv.
Well, it's just
What a perv.
it's just such a bad look, isn't it, in every single way. You know, I don't know. I mean, who do you kiss on the lips? Mrs. Mardo? Maybe your mother and dad at some stage, I suppose. When you're...
If the dog catches me at an emotional time,
Yeah, there you go.
for a few beers, I'll actually plan. Hey, listen, can I throw one on you that'll twist it the other way?
Right.
In terms of sleazy, creepy old men. I know you don't watch AFL, but the Lions, Brisbane Lions, our AFL team, they're going real well. They're coming second, okay? But what did you see the images of? We had a guy called Devlin Robertson, good-looking young rooster. Had his jersey completely stripped off him last week. He played 2 minutes of the game without a jersey on. Now, you tell me what this means. His Instagram account went from 7,000 followers to 48,000 as of yesterday.
Wow.
Pervy women. Women are so pervy that they won't let on. They've all just snuck onto his Instagram account. You know, they've gone, oh, Sue, did you see, check out this Devlin Robertson? And it's just gone berserk. He's got a fair old rig on him. He's a little bit better than you and I with his shirt off. Is that not, does somebody call them out and go, you're all a bunch of pervs, you women?
Well, let's go back. Remember the 2011 Rugby World Cup and Sonny Bill's shirt got ripped off at some stage, and the physio, who was a woman, went out there and spent about 3.5 hours changing that shirt, and every single woman in New Zealand said, I want to be you. And all of a sudden, all the young girls that were kicking a soccer ball decided to become rugby physios, Greg, because of that.
And you tell me, did anyone say, hey, hold on, pull them up? Somebody's got to call them out and go, it's not just blokes who are creepy. It's the whole human race.
Finally, and we were chatting about this on text last night, and you're exactly right. There's been two beautiful golden ages of Australian rugby, 84 to 92 and then 98 to 03. During that time, you dominated the All Blacks as well. The glory years, mate, is it possible to ever get back there? I know that Eddie Jones thinks it's possible, but is it?
No, well, Eddie's just talking, and as we said, he's been a marketing appointment. He keeps on saying he doesn't care about that game against France on Monday. He goes, it's not about that. It's about the World Cup, which starts a week later. No, well, you've seen me say it's a miracle if we make it to the quarterfinals, I believe, and if we make it to the semi-finals or the final, my God, we've overperformed and give him millions of dollars. He's done well. Rugby in this joint, the problem, do I go deeply into it? The problem here is, mate, we traditionally, there's 9 DPS schools in Brisbane and 9 DPS schools in Sydney. That's where all the players used to come from. And if you went down that track, you'd stay in rugby. Now, at all of those schools, the top 2 or 3 players are rugby league players already been signed by a rugby league team. So therefore, your best players and your leaders are just going to go straight to rugby league, and that's what's happening. Our best athletes are going to rugby league and bypassing rugby, and that's what's wrong with the game in Australia, and I don't know how we turn it around. Maybe a victory at the World Cup might make them go, I don't want to play. But there's only 4 or 5 franchises in Australia. There's 17 rugby league teams. So their manager goes, you've got a better chance of playing NRL. Go there. Don't worry about rugby. And that's what's wrong with our game, mate. We're not capturing the best athletes anymore, whereas we used to.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. That's our podcast for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to listen to the entire show, 1 till 4, Monday to Friday, download the Platform app, and via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to whatever shows over however many weeks at your leisure, at your listening pleasure. Platform Plus. First thing to do, though, is download the Platform app.
Devlin.
That is a disgusting act.
The Platform.